Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, today we are going to be looking at how we can go from this to this being a full Dicey Depths dungeon randomly generated through the use of our cards. Alright folks, an introduction to how a randomly generated Dicey Depths dungeon works. We have our big old tub full of pre-constructed, clipped together rooms and passageways. So if you saw my traps video, you saw how the passageway thing works. We have several just straightaway passages. We have these cornered passages. We have several different intersections. We have all different kinds of rooms. A few different shapes, but mostly they're going to be the 6x6. The door placement is just going to be different. So for example, this would be a corner room where you have one entrance and one exit, but there are rooms that have multiple paths, such as this one. And of course, the orientation of the room in the dungeon is going to change depending on the roll of a die. These were all pre-constructed in a specific way so that we are following the same pattern regardless of how it ends up shaping. So for example, here is just an example room and some passageways where the room was designed this size because we should be able to fit a party of 3 or 4 adventurers plus up to, anywhere from 1 to 6 adversaries plus some dungeon dressing. And I love that and I don't think I even mentioned this, but I may have. WarLock Tiles is what all of these dungeon pieces are. So they are clipped together, walls and floors. I love my Dwarven Forge stuff. The magnets work fine. You can drop in a metal, those metal terrain trays they have with a pre-constructed room on it. This is just, for me, for my money, in terms of being able to throw all of these pre-constructed rooms in a tub like this, take them to the game shop, take them to a friend's house, or heck, just store them in the closet until I'm ready to pull them out. This is what I'm really loving these days. But again, the doors open. There are those, I won't get into a whole WarLock Tiles review, but there are thin walls, which, I don't really like the looks of them. There's even thin doors that actually don't function, but these main thick doors do open so you can tell what rooms you've been in and out of and whatnot. But anyway, so it's a 6x6 room with all of the thick exterior walls around the outside, and then the passageways line up so that it is these 2-inch wide with walls that connect flush. So that's why it's able to look the way it does there. We have these dead end passageways so that you can have that same kind of look and feel there. And then these corners, the way we had to design these was for a specific reason where we couldn't just leave off this end cap here. So this end cap is made from a doorway with the doors removed, and because when I line them up here, you don't need a door here and doors for the passageway as well. And also these little pylon things clipped to the end, because if you don't have this section right here and you just leave it at that, when you connect this passageway to this room, it's one space closer, and that makes connecting the next room not as seamless. Because now look, see how perfect that lines up when you have this extra space there, this extra space there. So yeah, it just makes it on a grid just absolutely perfection. So that is the theory behind these pre-clipped rooms and passageways. We have one gigantic room here. That is the final encounter room. It's so big because obviously we have a lot of big minis. So depending on what we end up facing in the end, we may need a big space. But anyway, so that is the room and passage layout. So that was all fine and dandy until I wanted to, Dicey Depths. You can run it with a game master, and I often do, but I also like doing it just completely randomized, DM-less, GM-less. So let's take a look at how that works. All right, so the magic is in these decks of cards. And originally, and probably seen in prior videos that I've posted, I already had this deck of room cards. And so this, in a Dicey Depths dungeon, typically it is a D12 plus 1 rooms. So that could be anywhere from 2 to 13 rooms, where the final room is typically the boss encounter, though we can change that up any number of ways. But that being said, I have a lot more than just 13 room ideas. So we have this deck of room cards we can draw from. If you saw my traps video, we ran into this a lot. There's a bunch of these because not every room is going to be something, right? So we have a few of these cards that mention that there's just nothing remarkable in the room. But other times we have actual themes for the room. So like an altar, living quarters, the armory and whatnot. Whenever you reveal a new room, you then get to roll on this table to see if something of importance actually happened in that room. So for example, if you enter the living quarters, roll a d3, and if you rolled a 1 or a 2, nothing ended up happening. But a 3, finally, a quiet place to rest, but we must not linger long. Everyone in the party heals 1 HP, and it gives, sometimes there will be context. Like in this case, you can take the rest after or before the combat encounter that takes place in the room, if there is one. But all of the various types of rooms have a D3 roll on there for something potentially happening. And we have this whole big deck of cards. Again, some of them are the nondescript rooms. I can't remember exactly how many actual thematic rooms there are. I guess I could count, because we have, for every one of these rooms that has an actual theme to it, we have, and don't worry, we will get into all of this, but we have separate little cubbies with all of the dungeon dressing for that room. So we have the armory out here. So let's just go ahead and take that and get this going. So let's say that we entered this room, and I don't have Carl the Careful or any figure near me right now, but that's okay. Just pretend we walked into this room. We flipped over the next room card on the deck. It was the armory. We roll a d3, and potentially something could have happened here. But more importantly, as soon as you flip over the card that tells us it's an armory, you take the little dressing pack that for the armory, dump it in here, and then quickly just go ahead and go to town, assembling a little armory for the NPCs and the player characters to get involved in. So we have all different kinds of things, of course. We have little weapons racks, shields on there as well. We have piles of armor that, maybe on this table here. We have a bench. We have a little anvil. We have these mannequins that are holding the armor. We have just generic crates and barrels. We have a couple shields here that we can put on that rack. We have a little armorer's hammer as well. So we could maybe place it where he was like, pounding that little thing there. That little shield, and then boom, done. Here is the armory. Doesn't that look like a handsome little armory that you might just stumble into? I mean, everything is to scale. Everything just looks absolutely gorgeous. And there you go. Then your combat encounter would begin. We won't get into all of that in this video, but I just wanted to kind of show how that would work. You'd enter the room, you would draw the top card from the room deck, see what kind of room it is, resolve an event if there is one, dump all the stuff in there, and set up a quick room. And of course, the name of the game here is kind of fast, kind of efficient. So even though there's tons more dressing and accessories, we could, deck out this every square in this room with something. The key is you don't want to spend more time quickly putting dressing on here than you do actually playing the encounter in that room. So yeah, just enough stuff to give us a feel for what this room is, and then moving on. But every single one of these cards that has a thematic aspect to it, even the catacombs, there is a dressing pack for the catacombs, a dressing pack for the kitchen. All of the different rooms have those dressing packs where we will enter the next room and we will dump the dressing pack for that room into that room, and boom, it just ends up like, I just can't imagine. I just gotta say, I know I ramble on a lot. I am in love with I feel like we are in such a golden age of pre-painted dungeon dressing and terrain. Notice I said pre-painted because I get it. There's a lot of people out there who prefer painting their own, and that is totally cool. That is part of the hobby. For me, I love pre-painted stuff. Every piece of dressing in all, what is it, 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. So there's 19 different thematic room packs here. Every single piece of this dressing is pre-painted, and the fact that I'm able to do that, the fact that my whole dungeon here is pre-painted as well. So all I had to do was whip out the wallet, and believe me, I know you guys know it too. It's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like it ends up looking pretty sweet. And cleanup is essentially a breeze. You just dump all the stuff when the session's over back into the box, and boom, just like that, we have a room that can then be anything for next time. And the armory pack gets boxed back up and slipped back into there. Okay, so we know how the dressing packs work now, and we've known about how these I'm knocking the tripod everywhere. How all the room dressing packs work. The trap video, we looked at how all of the traps work, and I added some new traps as well. And of course, well, let's just go ahead and show some of those before we get into the new stuff. If you didn't see the trap video. So, for example, here's a passageway. In Dicey Depths, you are moving from room to passage to room to passage. And every time you enter a passageway, you'll nominate someone to try to discover and or disarm a trap. And if you disarm it, you don't even need to draw from the trap deck to even see what it was. You just disarm it, move on. For the rest of the encounter, that passageway is now free of traps. But if whoever was nominated to disarm it was unable to do so, the trap is then triggered. You draw the top card from the trap deck and see what it is. In this case, it was bats. Duck, no fool, bats. I'm sorry, that makes me giggle every single time. Declare odd or even and roll a d6, and this would be every adventurer does this. Anyone who fails receives a wound from the bats. And this whole traps deck is full of various and sundry traps. We have a whole pile of them there, and you better believe we absolutely have the dressing pieces to show off what the trap is. And that is somewhat important. I mean, in like my traps video, I left the trap card next to the passageway to remind everybody what the trap was, but in just a regular game, I may not do that just for table space concerns. This is actually one of my makeshift like poison gas clouds. I either do that or I do this, like a plume of vile poisonous smoke emanating up from like a grate in the floor or what have you. But whatever it ends up being, slime ooze in the floor gets placed in the passageway. Buzzsaw blade gets placed in the passageway. There was a couple new sets of those WizKids trap tiles that fit perfectly with the Warlock tiles, so that's what a lot of these are. Some of these are from their older trap sets, like these flame jets. I just think that that is so cool. I mean, whatever you do, these corkscrew blades, these swinging blades, all of these different kinds of things just end up looking so cool. And so, yeah, no matter what the trap is, there is a dressing piece for it here. So just like every single room gets a thematic pack to show off what is going on in there, the traps do as well, because that is also vitally important for me to have that kind of immersion. So that is how we reveal what is in a passageway. All right, so that was that. We figured out what each room is going to be. We figured out if and what kind of trap there is. But then I wanted the layouts to also be left up to chance. So we have cards here for every different style of passageway, every different style of room. So if I didn't shuffle this, did I shuffle it? Okay, so we all start out with the entrance, but the entrance way actually has its own card because of certain scenarios. Like maybe you actually started in a cell and now you have to try to find the entrance. So you may, depending on how big of a dungeon you have here, you may shuffle the entrance into just the deck as a whole or in the last 5 cards or whatever the case may be. So now you're going room to room to see if you can find the entrance. Oh, and that ended up being on the bottom of the stack. That would not have been too sweet. But anyway, I feel like this is so close. All right. So this room pack, apart from the entrance card, has all of these following different rooms. And again, there is a card for every room that's in this big old tub of pre-constructed rooms. So here's a corner room. And corner rooms are one of the more common types of rooms. So there's going to be a couple of those. A straight through room. Here's the boss room. So typically that'll be on the bottom of the stack or maybe shuffled into the last few cards so you're not entirely sure when the boss is going to show up. Here's a dead end room. More corner rooms, dead end rooms. Here's a 3-way room. More 3-way rooms. Here's a 4-way room, and I think that's all the different types of rooms. So there is an actual physical room for every single room of these cards. So you have this deck flipped down. You're in the entrance room, all right, and then you'll actually move into a passage first. We'll get into that in a second. But then from that passage connects to another room. It is a corner room. Now, do you enter this door or is it oriented that way? And that's when you roll a die. I cannot believe I did not grab a D6. But you would basically just split it up. A 1, 2, or 3, it'll remain in this orientation. A 4, 5, or 6, it'll be faced that way. And that way the orientation of the room is going to be potentially different, as well as the different style of room, whatever the case may be. And of course, I drew another duplicate corner room, but that's okay. And then, so you have the entrance, you have a passageway into the next room, oriented however you rolled. You then draw a room card and see what it is. In this case, it was nothing, but if it was a thematic room, you would dump the pack of stuff in there, etc. And then keep going from there. Now, next, let's take a look at these passage cards. Same kind of thing here. So here's a straight passage. Here's the 4-way intersection passage, a dead end passage. There's a couple others like a T intersection. There is a corner in here somewhere. Did I already show off the corner? No, they're both over here, corner passages. So there's a few different types and, of course, multiples of each. So there is a card in this deck for every single passageway that we've clipped together as well. And we've clipped together enough rooms so that if you did roll, because don't forget, a randomized dungeon in Dicey Depths is a D12 plus 1. So that could just be the entrance room and the boss room if you just rolled a 1. Or if you rolled a 12, that would be a 13 encounter room. There are, I believe, 14 total rooms that we've created here. So there could be some variety in what rooms come out. But of course, it'll always be pretty much different. The order that the rooms come out, the orientation of the rooms, the way the passageways come up, etc. And so there are different possibilities every time. So that is how the passageway and room layout decks work. So let's actually see this in practice. All right, folks, and here is the entrance room. So the entrance room has a couple of features about it. The entrance room will always have 3 possible ways you can go with the entrance piece. So if this was a ground level keep or castle or something, we use this double door piece. But say that it's not, we have a dressing pack for the entrance as well, so that we can do a couple different things. Maybe this is actually a wall, and instead of a double door being there, we have some stairs. So this would be like you're actually descending into a dungeon. Oh, by the way, we have Frank the Finger here. I don't know how in the world he got that nickname, but he's going to show us through these rooms. So Frank the Finger enters the dungeon, maybe potentially down these stairs, or potentially, maybe it wasn't that obvious. Maybe it was actually a ladder from an upper story down in here. So you have a few options: a ladder, stairs, a big double door, what have you. So then you have 3 different possible ways you can go. And actually, we have even more dressing pieces here. Now, these dressing pieces in this entrance pack, I'll typically either use those if it was, you know, just to show like a grand entrance way kind of thing, or just a few of these pieces. Like, I don't even have to use all of these for the entranceway. I could save some of them for some of those nondescript rooms, like the barrels and crates and things. Maybe I'll hold those off for a nondescript room so that there's at least a little something in there. But in this instance, I actually ended up taking out all of the nondescript room cards from the room deck because, yeah, in the traps video, we ran into a lot of those empty rooms and that was kind of boring. So every card in this room deck is going to actually be something. So anyway, here we are, Frank in the entranceway. We are then, and I'm not going to go through the entire dungeon like this, but I just thought for the first couple we can do this. Let's have Frank, and we actually need to orient this a little bit better here so that we're right in the center. All right, Frank is actually going to head this way. So how does that work? Again, passageway deck. We're heading into a passageway. What type is it? It is a corner passage. So we will grab one of our corner passages. The way we orient this, I can't remember if I said it in this video or not, but the leftmost possible opening gets connected to the door, and we actually roll a d6. A 1, 2, or 3, it's going to stay like that. A 4, 5, or 6, it'll actually be oriented the other way. So let's find out if this passageway changes, and it does. It actually turns toward us here. And so that way it'll come down this way. And since this video is mostly focused on rooms, I'm not going to draw trap cards for all the passages, but in this case it was an arrow wall, which I think was actually the very first trap that we had in the traps video as well. So for those, I have these little arrow slit walls. These are some old Dwarven Forge resin ones. Sometimes I stick them inside of the passage because it's a little bit more obvious in that case, but other times I'll stick them behind the walls. That way you can fit more people and stuff in the actual passageway itself. So again, check the traps video on how we resolve all of these. But in this case, this one says it's a speed test times 3. We would roll 3d6. And a speed test, you have to roll below your speed attribute. So let's say your speed attribute was a 4. You'd have to roll a 3 or less. And in this case, it's times 3. So we're rolling 3d6. Let's say Frank, I didn't roll up stats for him. I probably should have. But let's say Frank's speed attribute was a 4. He would need 3s or less on 3d6. So let's see if he takes any wounds. That was a 6. That is a wound. That was a 5. That's a wound. And that is another 6. Oh my gosh. Frank, get your finger out of your nose and pay attention here. Because you just got hit 3 times by arrows in the wall. That was pretty bad, actually. All right, so that would be how a trap is resolved. And then we would move into the next room. And that then is where the room layout cards are. So what is this next room? It is a dead end room. All right, so that means we are going to have to find a dead end room to place. Pop that door open and see now what is in this dead end room by drawing the top card of the room deck. It is the kitchen. Fantastic. So right off the entryway, we end up having the kitchen. And so now we would just grab the kitchen dressing pack here, dump it into the room, and just quickly set things up here. Maybe some shelves over here. Kind of some counter space. We have like a wash basin and a water tub over here. Of course, there's probably crates and barrels in here as well. Boom, done. So here is our little kitchen that we have thrown together. And then Frank and company would come in. We'd encounter whatever it was to encounter in here. So let's see, what would the encounter be in the kitchen? So again, we're rolling a d3. This ends up being a 2, so nothing happens. But if we rolled A 3, it would be something smells interesting, to say the least. Among the piles of dirty dishes, rotted meat, and moldy bread, a pot simmers above a log fire. Each member of the party may serve themselves a bowl of the hot stew. For those that do, roll a d6. So it's a 50-50 shot of either getting some healing out of the deal or becoming infected from the rotten stew. So that is potentially something that could happen in the kitchen. So, I mean, that looks pretty good, right? Like, I'm just such a sucker for dungeon dressing. Oh my gosh. But in that first little bit, we went into the entrance. We took a left into a corner passage that was trapped with an arrow wall and into the kitchen. Where evidently nothing was going on. And actually, we didn't show this, but Frank could have tried to disarm the passage before even drawing a trap card. So let's say he did try to do that. The way that works is you'd set a target value or roll a target value. You have a 4. So now whoever you nominate to disarm the trap has 3 attempts to get a 4. And he did not. So he failed. That at that point is when you would draw the trap card to see what it was. The rogue character type in Dicey Depths gives you 2d6 when you're trying to roll to resolve a trap. So instead of having 1d6 3 times to get a 4, the rogue would get 2d6 3 times to try to get a 4. So rogues are much better at disarming traps than Frank the Finger over here. My gosh. But this was a dead end room, which means we have to go back, and whenever there is a trap in a passageway, going back through that passage, you have to roll to resolve it again. So Frank, for example, and again, I'm not going to do this for all of these, but let's go ahead and see what happens here. Oh, that's another arrow wound. Oh, he got by with one there, but he took a second. So he's taken 5 wounds so far just from this arrow passageway. Oh my gosh, Frank, quit picking your nose. This time he wants to go to the right. I'm just going to show one more manual placement here, and then I'll just create a whole dungeon and we can just look at the entire thing because it's already 27 minutes. I just don't understand. I look at the time on these videos and I'm like, Rick, you talk way too much. It's already a half hour. All right, anyway. So what happens first? We decide to go in this direction. First things first, we draw the next passageway card. This time it is a straight passage. Fair enough. We attach a straight passage there. Now, we set a trap target value to see if Frank either notices or disarms a trap. So we have a 2. So Frank has 3 attempts to roll a 2. He rolls a 3, he rolls a 3, and he rolls a 3. So this passageway is trapped. We then draw the next trap card. What is it? It is buzzsaws. Declare odd or even twice, rolling a d6 after each, and each failure is a wound. So, like we saw, we are now going to place a buzzsaw trap in this passageway. We're rolling a d6 twice. Frank the Finger is going to declare evens. He rolled a 1. He's going to declare even again and rolls a 6. So he does get clipped by the buzzsaw and takes a wound. So for those keeping track at home, he's now taken 6 wounds total from traps. And then we move on. But because that trap did trigger, even though he's passed it by once, just like with the arrow trap, if we ever have to come back this way, we're going to have to re-resolve. Now, if he would not have discovered a trap, or if he was able to disarm it originally without revealing what it was, then that passageway is permanently free of traps, no matter how many times you go back and forth. All right, but what is the next room? The next room is another dead-end room. Oh my gosh, I swear I didn't put the other one back in the deck yet. Frank is having the worst luck at navigating this dungeon. All right, and what do we have in this dead-end room? What is the room card? It is the Great Hall, which makes sense. The kitchen was not too far away. So now we find the Great Hall dressing pack. We dump that into the room. We do have a couple of little tiny things in this one, but nothing too crazy. We'll put a fireplace right in the middle there. We do have this nice cornered bar area where I'm going to put some of these kegs and small barrels. And then we have several of these little tiny pints, which I know they're so small, but oh, they just make me so happy. So then we will put a couple of tables, I don't know, something like this maybe, up against the walls with these benches alongside. And try not to take too terribly long. Knocking everything over always helps, of course. Barrel, we'll just put that in the corner. And all of these little pint things on the tables. And then this is your completed Great Hall. So then inside of this Great Hall is where the next encounter takes place. And yeah, and of course you don't have to put everything in here. And in fact, this was probably not the most efficient use of space. I may do something like this. Because, you know, the shape of the room and where the doors are placed and stuff also matters. So you may just want to use a few pieces out of the dressing pack when you actually go for setting the room up, just because there may not be enough space for your entire party as well as, you know, everyone else. Honestly, I think that may look a little bit better with the tables flanking the fireplace like that. But anyway, so that is that. So Frank then would have to come back through here, retry his luck with the buzzsaw, and then head up in this direction. All right, that is where we'll pause it. I'm now going to create the rest of the dungeon, and then we will be back. All right, quick peek so far. So we came up into a T-intersection where there were a couple of pit traps, into this room, which ended up being the barracks, through this passage, which ended up being a dead-end passage, back around up this way, which ended up being the chapel, into a four-way intersection with a pair of crushing walls, and then we just took a left into this room. So we'll find out what that room is and continue the build. All right, another quick update. This room ended up being the storeroom. Heading down this way was a dead end. So instead of heading up that way, we actually decided to go across this way, which ended up being the throne room, into a passageway of whirling blades of death, also known as the, what do I call them, corkscrew blades, into the blacksmith, across to some swinging blades, into the catacombs. I shifted the entire build this way since now there were no options to go this way. It looks like everything's expanding out that way or up. Now, if it continues up across the table, we'll just re-enter the table from down here. But we have a long straightaway of rooms going and heading into the next passage now. All right, folks, and this is the last and final room, the boss room. Oh my gosh. You may be asking yourself, what the heck happened here? All right, so let's try to recap this. I can't even remember where we left off. I know we were headed in this direction, and it was getting crazy. We had the catacombs, then a passageway with the stone block, then into the armory, up this way where we found the slime trap, up into the treasury room, the statue room, and then into a passageway with the acid pool, into the torture chamber, which was a four-way room. Every single passage that I drew, I swear, was, for that room, I had 3 dead-end passages in a row. So obviously we went off the table there. So we put this here, went up here, went over. All of these ended up being dead-end passages, I guess, little rooms. I mean, they could be like cells or prison cells, because again, this is the torture chamber. So we had to backtrack, back. We went to with our next option, which ended up being this the throne room straight up that way where we found the poison gas, which led us, we came on from this side, into the living quarters. This room ended up being a dead-end passage as well. So, I mean, that left us with two options. We could either go up this corridor or go back into the storeroom and go up that way. We just decided to go up because we didn't want to try to risk another trapped passageway, I guess you could say. So we went up that other four-way intersection because that then ends up being the final boss chamber, because we were out of rooms. That was it. That was the last and final room. We have two straight passages and one corner passage remaining, but otherwise that was everything. So can you believe that is how the layout ended up? Because I wanted to follow the cards. Even though this doesn't look very pretty in terms of orientation or layout or anything, and for the thumbnail, I'm probably going to rearrange these into a more photo-friendly dungeon. I mean, from here, that doesn't look too terribly bad, right? But we then have that other room over there. So we have these kind of off-the-table rooms. And I almost kind of like to think of off-the-table rooms being almost a different level. So maybe that was stairs up to a different level or stairs down to another level. But either way, I love leaving it up to the cards because this actually kind of tells a story now, right? So let's do a flyover. And I can't remember if I said I swapped the entrance out back to this double doorway because I feel like this was too grand of a complex to leave to just descending down an old wooden ladder, and all this happened to be down here. I mean, you could come up with a story for that as well. Maybe it was ancient and, filled in, the old entrance was destroyed or something. But anyway, so we entered here. Trapped passageways on the left and right led to the Great Hall and the kitchen, which makes perfect sense. You have food, you eat it. You move up this corridor. There are the barracks and a closet for the barracks, evidently. Move up into the chapel. Move up into this four-way. Now, if we head straight, that goes into that final boss chamber. But if we head to the left, that's a storeroom. We don't know what's up that way. But down this way is just another closet, evidently, in the storeroom. Going this way is the throne room. Heading up, another trap passageway into, evidently, the Lord's living chamber with another small closet in there. But if we head this way, protected by these corkscrew blades, probably crafted by the blacksmith themselves, is the blacksmith. In between them and the catacombs ended up being some swinging blades. A falling block trap led to the armory, which headed up a slime trapped passageway into the trophy room, then guarded by the acid pool. Way at the back end of this whole situation was the torture chamber. So, I mean, I love how it kind of tells its own story based on what you find. And of course, we still have several rooms we didn't end up using, like the dungeon, the necromancer's altar, the treasury, a campsite, a library, a study. So still so many more rooms that could have come out, depending what would have been next. The altar, then the treasury, then the campsite, etc. And of course, more trapped passageways could have been. We didn't see the bats or the spiked floor or the bear traps. So there's still so much more, but this is just one example. So how many rooms is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So actually, we went one room bigger than a normal Dicey Depths max dungeon would have been. Because don't forget, that's a D12 plus 1. So 13 max, but we did go to 14 just so I could throw out another room there. But that is it, folks. This went super long, almost 40 minutes. Good Lord. But you know me, I just love building these kind of layouts. So this is what an example of a randomly generated Dicey Depths dungeon could end up looking like, with the various thematic rooms and the various trapped passageways. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.